the boss of the International Red Cross has warned that Europe will have huge upheaval, and
Yeah, yeah, no shit. Yeah, you're gonna have to wait for him to say it.
I mean, that's your famous saying: when people lose everything, they lose it.
Yeah, yeah, and Europe, they lost. I mean, look what's going on in Greece. Look what's going on in Spain. Look what's going on in Portugal. We need the guy from the Red Cross. No kidding. Anyway, it's class warfare.
Right. So let's go.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about America first?
Whatever you'd like, Manfred. What's it, 1 o'clock for you over there, 1 a.m.?
No, it's 20 to midnight.
20 to midnight, okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Can you give me a quick rundown what you think regarding this fiscal cliff stuff? What is it real? Is it not? Is it what's happened now? What's the situation in America?
On the fiscal cliff, and what's the situation in America? I've been in this business now for going on my 33rd year, and I have never seen an election like the one that we just had for President of the United States. Not only did most people not care about it, but after it was over, there was no post-election euphoria. The bud fell off the election rose almost overnight. You look what happened with the world equity markets. They went down immediately after Election Day. And then from that time on, all we've been hearing day after day, week after week, month after month, are we going to fall off the fiscal cliff? So what they do is they use fear and hysteria, whether it's terrorism or financial panic, one way or another, they put themselves at the top that we in Washington are going to save the day. Let's play this back. In August of 2011, the United States got its credit rating downgraded because Congress and the White House could not solve the debt problem. So what they did was, being politicians, and being that politicians to me, you could call a prostitute, a murderer, and a crook. But for some reason, you can't call politicians either prostitutes, murderers, or crooks, or all three. What they did was they deferred dealing with this until after the election. Mm-hmm. And they did that purposely so that they would not have to be held responsible for their actions. Mm-hmm. So now what happened? They said that if we don't come to an agreement by December 31st, taxes will automatically go up and spending cuts will go in and everybody will suffer. So that was the drama. The drama from the DC drama queens and the Beltway circle jerks. It was the fiscal cliff soap opera. So now they come to an agreement to almost save the day. Just like those old, back in the 1920s and early 30s, those serials where they tie the person up on the railroad track, the girl, and the train would be coming. And just before the train was getting there, tune in tomorrow. Will she be saved? That's about the same thing. Uh-huh. So now what they did was nothing. Obama lied. The people that could afford it the least are paying more. They have to pay more in Social Security taxes, whether you're making $20,000 a year, which is nothing, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. It gradually goes up the more you pay. And I mention that, just in thinking now, they have this thing in America, they call things like Social Security entitlement programs, as though the government is giving you something. They're not giving you anything. There's your money. They're taking your tax out and putting it in there, and now they're going to take out more. This is after Obama said he wasn't going to do it. Mm-hmm. Number two, the hedge funds, the private equity groups, the vulture capitalists that buy companies and do these big deals, create nothing, they're still allowed to claim what they did as a capital gains tax. And meaning that they created something and they could pay a lower tax rate when they're creating nothing. So now they put that up to about 20%. It should be at 40%. And then the loopholes are all left in place, for the multinationals, for all the offshore corporations. And they put in place a tax credit, a mortgage tax credit when you buy a new home. Not to help the people, but to help the real estate industry and the mortgage bankers. So what they did was they only took a little bit away from the people, and they did nothing to address the bigger issue. How are they going to save money? I could give you one. How about this? How about cutting the defense budget? That's right. Yeah, it's that, Manfred, when you add in scams like Homeland Security, the CIA, all of these defense and defense-related expenditures, you're talking about $1.2 trillion. That's right. For what? To fight wars in foreign countries and to keep repressing the people at home. So that's the fiscal cliff. It's a soap opera. And again, how could any thinking adult believe for 1 second that Washington, the same people who bring you wars that can't be won, that only kill millions of people and destroy our troops. By the way, some 26,000 Iraqi and Afghan veterans are sleeping out in the streets.
Jesus.
Yes. And millions of more are destitute. And of course, the suicide rate keeps going up as they come back realizing that they've been sacrificed for psychopaths. And they've been giving them all of these psychotropic drugs to deal with their mental and physical conditions that have been destroyed as a result of fighting in these wars. So when you look at the waste coming out of this country and going into the pockets of the military-industrial complex, and then listen to the Beltway circle jerks and DC drama queens talking about fiscal cliff, it's a joke.
I don't know if you get this in America, but here in Switzerland, we have been under attack from America regarding this tax evasion stuff and bank secrecy stuff tremendously. Obviously, the American government is trying everything to collect the taxes from whoever they can get, you know, and they use a lot of pressure to do that. The pity is that our government is bowing down to this pressure, you know.
It is, I'm very well aware of it. And I've been following it since it began a few years ago. And it is a pity. And not only that, look what they did. You know, I used to invest in the Swiss currency, the Swiss franc. And then all of a sudden, one day I woke up and they pegged it to the euro. Remember that one?
Sure.
Yeah. So yes, they're bowing down because there's a new world order. And it's not behind closed doors. It's the banking order. And the order of the day is to get all the money they can from the people, siphon it off, give it to the government, give it to their friends, make bad bets, have everybody else pay them off when they lose. So that's all you're seeing. It's corruption from one end of the continent to the other, across the pond and around the world. That's the new culture of the day. So Switzerland, I used to call the Swiss the money cockroaches of the world. You know, they're not going to lose anything. No matter what you do to them, they're always going to be there. And you look at your history, you haven't been in a war in what? Since the 1850s, I think, or 30s?
Yeah, Napoleon,
yeah. Yeah. So, but now, of course, they're all bending as the pressures of the world banks grow bigger.
The latest news I just published was something that was on the Wall Street Journal, where they wrote that the Spanish government has put their hand into the pension fund, and they took 90% of the 60 billion euros to buy up their own government bonds. So they're stealing the pension fund to buy up their own debt. I mean, this is nothing unusual, but this is the latest news from Spain. So, I mean, this is ridiculous.
They're just catching up to America. They do the same thing here. They go into the Social Security Fund. Yeah, so it's what they all do. It's a criminal operation. Can't people get that in their mind? They just have names for them, like Republicans and Democrats, rather than Bananos and Gambinos, like social democrats and green parties, like they have over there in Germany, rather than, you know, Lanskys and Dutch Schultzes, or whatever names the parties have. These are mafia operations. These are not democracies. You have a gang of politicians that represent the most powerful people and the ones that give them the most amount of money. End of story. And that's why, by the way, I admire what does go on in Switzerland with direct democracy. And they should have more of it. There should have been a direct democracy vote when they decided to turn over all the banking data to America. But then again, when you look at the dirty dealings going on with the banks, you know, hey, it's one crook dealing with another. You know, look at HSBC and all the money laundering.
Yeah.
Look at the scandals with the LIBOR rigging.
Yeah.
You know, have you seen any heads roll on that one?
None.
So it's just gang warfare. That's all.
So we are seeing all the things that you predicted years ago regarding upheaval and people getting poorer and poorer in the southern European countries, but also now getting closer and closer to the center of Europe is all happening. So what do you think will be 2013? More of that?
Yes, of course. The only thing that they're doing to keep it at the level that it's at is printing more money. And whether it's in the United States with their quantitative easing, was Mario Draghi over there with the ECB last year at this time with their long-term refinancing operations, ELTHRO, we'll make up a name. That means giving money to banks, all they need to keep them afloat and pay us back when you get the dough. And then, of course, there's ongoing monetary transactions, OMTs. And then, of course, we'll buy up bonds continually as long as we have to. And then you just had an election over there in Japan. Abe, the prime minister. What's the first thing he did? Put pressure on the Bank of Japan to pump more dough in. Currency war, he said. That's right. Currency wars, trade wars, world war. Same, same, same. We've heard it before. Play it back. Crash in 1929, Great Depression, currency wars, trade wars, world war, panic of '08, Great Depression, currency wars, trade wars, world war. So I see more upheaval, more wars. Call them what you will, put a label on them. In Europe, you could call it class warfare. In Egypt and Tunisia, you could call it an Arab Spring. In Syria and Libya, you could call it civil war. Same in Yemen, same in Bahrain. You go around the world, there's upheavals everywhere. You just came back from Argentina. There's no middle class. People have bars on their windows. Their doors are locked, and they're afraid what's going to happen next. And it's the same thing that's happening around a lot of places around the world. And then you look at the data that just came out a couple of days ago. Hey, good news. The billionaires just made $300 billion more. Yay for the multi-billionaires. Yay for the richest people in the world. They're now worth a small group $2 trillion. You get it?
It's incredible, yeah. Do you think that, I mean, the whole, now we've been talking about this for years, and I personally thought that things would happen quicker, but obviously it's taking a longer time, and the whole downfall of society is going more in a slow motion process. So what do you think?
I would have thought it happened sooner as well. I would have thought it would have happened back in 2010.
Yep.
But did I know that behind the scenes they were coming up with new schemes undreamed of?
Yeah.
How about pumping in tens of trillions of dollars to failing banks? How about coming up with a term too big to fail and kill capitalism by stealing the people's money and giving it to the banks? Did I ever envision that the psychopaths and sociopaths in chief would make up a scheme called austerity measures? And that means taking every ounce of money left that people have and giving it to their banks to keep it afloat? Did I know that people like Mario Draghi would invent Elthro and OMT and we'll do whatever we need to do? Did I ever envision a quantitative easing? Never heard the word before. So that's why it hasn't collapsed as quickly as many of us thought it would, and it should have.
Yeah.
The other factor is play the timeline. We're 5 years now into the panic. Go back. Go back to the crash in 1929. We're only now in 34 in a timeline.
Okay.
So that's where we're going. So my forecast for 2013 is more of the same, but worse.
Okay. Do you think that, I personally think that Assad cannot hold it much longer. The powers around him are just too much. Do you think he will fall?
Who?
Assad.
Oh,
Syria.
Assad. You know what, of course, we're coming out with our top trends for 2013. We've released the short pieces of them, as synopses.
Yeah.
But we're coming out with the full story, and of each of the trends. And one of them is going to be war. The other one's going to be peace. There's going to be a time that if NATO, the United States, continue their aggressive movements into sovereign nations, it's going to come home. In 2000, I was brought down to Virginia Military Institute, VMI. That's the place where Mitt Romney announced his foreign policy initiative during this last election.
Right.
And I was brought down there to speak about new millennium warfare. Manfred, they say the generals are always fighting the last war. They're fighting the last war again, so they asked me to see what the next one would look like. And I talked about weapons of mass destruction and suitcase-sized nukes and biological warfare. If you were Assad, and I said to you, you better step down. If you don't, we're going to take you down. Maybe you would say to me, listen, you have bigger guns than I have. and your military is 1,000 times more powerful. But let me tell you something. You take me out, I'm going to take you out. No, not the same way. Maybe we'll send off a... Qatar's very involved in this. Maybe we'll let off a dirty bomb in their major city. Or maybe the Saudis. Or maybe London. Or maybe Paris. Or maybe Washington, D.C. and New York City. How about a suitcase-sized nuke for San Francisco? What about some biological warfare in Atlanta? You gonna take me out? It'll be the worst mistake you ever make. That day is going to happen.
I'm wondering that it hasn't happened because I'm surprised, for instance, that Gaddafi didn't use any sleepers to do something.
Go back to what the North Koreans said. And again, we wrote about all of this before it happened. And we had the timeline playing out as it was going on, when the rumblings against Gaddafi just began. Mm. We did an enormous piece on it in the Trends Journal. The North Koreans said the greatest mistake Gaddafi ever made was stopping his advancement toward developing a nuclear weapon. Yeah. Yeah. Syria may not be it. They may still be too unsophisticated. I don't know. But they're going to pick on the wrong guy in the wrong country, and it's going to happen. Saddam Hussein wasn't that guy. Gaddafi didn't have it. Maybe Assad does.
Mm-hmm. Well, the situation is that Syria is completely surrounded by enemies, and they have endless money to and resources. So I don't see how he can survive that pressure.
Again, as I said, it's kind of like a Masada moment. Yeah. When you know that you're going to die, yeah, but you commit suicide.
Right.
And this time the suicide may be a suicide pact to take somebody else out.
Right.
So we may see a 21st century Masada moment.
Mm-hmm. Now, many analysts say that Syria is kind of the last domino to fall, and then Iran will be the actual target. I have the feeling that they have tried a couple of times to attack Iran, and somebody must have stopped them. Don't you think so?
There's a piece that was recently printed in the Israeli newspaper, Haaretz, and they quote the former head of their Secret Service, Shin Bet.
Yeah.
And he goes on to say, in no uncertain terms, that Netanyahu and Barak are out of their minds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, most of these world leaders are. If you weren't out of your mind, you wouldn't be starting wars with other people. Mm-hmm. I believe the United States does have its thumb on Israel. Mm-hmm. But I also believe that, and I agree with many of the other analysts, that Syria is a stepping stone into Iran. Mm-hmm. And of course, Syria is the last ally of Iran in the Middle East. Syria is the last port that the Chinese and Russians could go into in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And so with the United States, Israel, and its NATO allies controlling the whole area, that also marginalizes Russia, it marginalizes Iran, and it marginalizes China to an extent. Mm-hmm. So I think it's another great game, and nothing has really changed. Just from the UK, now it's gone to the US, but the same game, great game changers are at the helm.
All right. What do you think we can do in Europe as a normal guy to kind of prepare ourselves for this whatever is coming towards us. What's definitely coming is that people are getting poorer and poorer all the time.
I believe that what people have to do is, number one, they have to solidify around their community. Find strength first from within. Just for the record, I've had my ups and downs in my career. I used to be on Oprah when it was very popular, the Today Show, Good Morning America, CNN maybe 4 or 5 times a month, continually quoted in USA Today, on every major news program that you can imagine. And then I made a mistake. In one of my books, Trends 2000, back in 1997 when it came out, I wrote it as though you were waking up in the new millennium. And I said that there'd be a Crusades 2000 raging. I coined the term, the book's there for everyone to see. And I gave the reasons why and what it would devolve into. And it was because of Western imperialism propping up dictators, kind of like Mubarak and others around the globe. And that impoverished people would rally around charismatic clerics. That's the term I used, to save their destiny. And that's exactly what happened. So now when 9/11 happened, all of the media around the world bombards me. What happened? Why did it happen? So what do you mean, why did it happen? I've been writing about this for years. Actually, I coined the term Crusades 2000 in the Trends Journal in 1993. And I read to them from my book what would happen and why it would happen. That's not why. You know why they attacked America? And that's, of course, if you believe it was something else. We'll just say that the towers came down and the Pentagon was hit.
Right.
That's not why they attacked us, Mr. Salenti. They attacked us because they hate our freedom and liberty.
Sure.
That's right. I heard President Bush say that. And if President Bush said it, you're wrong. Then all of a sudden, CNN stops calling me. And then the Afghan war broke out, started to break out. And they called me up once again. I'm a trend forecaster. Trends and consequences. What's going to happen? I said, that's an easy one. Alexander the Great couldn't pull it off. The British couldn't pull it off. The Russians couldn't pull it off. What makes you think the Americans and NATO are going to be successful in Afghanistan? The war will go on forever and they'll get thrown out. Boop. I started getting cut off from more radio and TV and newspapers. Then the Iraq War happened. What's going to happen in Iraq? Oh, that's an easy one. Considering the size of the American military compared to Hussein's, this is going to be a quick battlefield victory. The guy will be overthrown. It'll devolve into a civil war, and Americans will leave after they've killed as many people as they want to kill, spend as much as they want to spend, and have no more to kill or spend. That was the end of my career.
Right.
I went broke from literally 2003 to 2007. I got blackballed from everybody. Now they have me back. So I'm saying this because people should not give up. In my darkest moments, I never lost faith in myself. And that is the answer of not losing faith in yourself. I lost my house. I was $500,000 in debt. And I was renting a tiny little joint. And this is after, being on top.
Yeah.
And one day I said to myself at my darkest moment, even though people don't believe in me, I believe in me. And all of this time I'm spending learning and reading and analyzing and writing, very few people are doing what I'm doing now. Because I knew that when I was very busy, I wasn't reading in the details that I'm reading when I had nothing else to do. And what happened, Manfred, in 2007, I took out the domain name, The Panic of '08.
Yeah.
And then Fox, who still has me on, Fox TV had a show called The Happy Hour at the Bull and the Bear restaurant in the Waldorf Astoria.
Yeah, I remember.
Remember that one?
Sure.
And I announced the Panic of '08. And people were starting to feel it. All of a sudden, my popularity skyrocketed. Knock on wood, I'm bigger now than I ever was in terms of business and forecasting. The moral of the story are two. Number one, what can people do as they see it going down in front of them? Number one is really go down deep into yourself and find out what you're made of. And do whatever you can do to bring those greatest skills and traits that only you have to their highest possible level. And the other part of the morality of the story is that when I forecast a panic that had to do with money, it meant more than forecasting about morality.
Yeah.
So the moral of the story is, in this world today, money counts more than morality. The second thing that people should do is, as I said, coalesce as a community after you build yourself physically, emotionally, and spiritually strong. And then really start to awake that there are no powers out there that should be dictating on how you should lead your lives. Start rebelling against the immorality that's coming from, whether it's coming from your religious institutions or the political institutions. Wherever it may be coming from, stand up and fight back. And I'm not talking about fighting back with bullets or guns or spears or knives. I'm talking about an intellectual and spiritual revolution. Awaken to the fact that that little wanker over there, Rajoy, and all the rest of them, when they show up, who are these honor guards around them with these phony, shitty costumes that playing like they're from another era and rolling out a red carpet and saluting? You want a salute? Here's one for you. Get this shit out of here. Get back to work. Let the people start telling the politicians that they're the public servants, that they should do what they're told, rather than this higher order that is really of the lowest order tell them what to do. Until that happens, the people will suffer.
What's happening in Germany is that the election process is starting. I mean the whole pre-election stuff. Do you think that Merkel will get it again, or will there be some other parties?
Well, the guy that's running now is a loser too. So it's going to be more of the same. She'll probably win it. As it's going now, the guy keeps putting his foot in his mouth. Yeah. He's not a very sharp guy, You mean
Steinbrück from SPD?
Yeah. I mean, do you think he is?
No, I mean he's
he's one of them.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
One of them, but not as bright.
I always say you have the choice between Pepsi and Coke.
Well, you saw the cover of our Trends Journal, The Lesser of Two Evils.
Right, exactly, yeah. The situation is that, for instance, in Germany, they are going to increase the tax. You see, there is a reduced tax rate on food. And the latest news is that they will, after the election, increase the tax to the full amount of 19%, which of course will then hit the prices of food and hit the poor people. What they're doing now is they are, of course, holding back all these tax increases until the election, which is the typical way of doing it.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. This is not a democracy. They're run by mafias, the banking mafia. Look what's going on in Portugal. They just announced 2 weeks ago that they're going to put more taxes on people, even pensioners, and anybody making over the minimum wage. They just increased all the taxes. The people are in depression already, and now they're kicking them while they're down. This is what psychopaths do. And that's why I'm saying, until there's a great awakening, and people find out that and understand that they are responsible for their destiny and their own salvation, until that happens, or if it happens, nothing is going to change. And the worst news is that your psychopathic leaders are going to take you to war, because when all else fails, that's what they do. Really gets your mind off tough economies.
Yeah. What I've noticed and a lot of my colleagues is that although I think we are the best informed kind of people, we know what's going wrong, and because of all the work that people like you and everybody is doing. But what really frustrates me is that people have all this knowledge what's going wrong, but they're not acting on this knowledge. Is that something that frustrates you too?
Of course.
Yeah.
We're going to be writing a lot about that in the Trends Journal. This is a coming issue. And it boils down to, there are a number of reasons why, but one of them is that people are locked into their belief systems. And even when their belief system turns out to be a lie, they don't have and that goes back to what I said, they don't have the courage, they don't have the self-respect or the dignity to admit that what they believed in was a lie. You know, I'm a close combat practitioner.
Yeah, I heard you. Do you have the black belt, right?
Yeah, and for many years I used to practice other forms. One of them was Okinawan Te. And I had my own school as well. And what used to happen is people used to come in, you know, they knew all these forms by rote, whether it was Taekwondo or Kung Fu, and they all have a purpose, but they're different, Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu. They're not close combat, it's a different deal. So when a guy would come in, and I'd be the smallest guy in the class, my teacher, John Perkins, the website, by the way, is attackproof.com. These big guys would come in, and he'd introduce me to them, them to me, and then he'd say to them, okay, do whatever you want to do to Gerald. And then we'd start working out, and I had the guy against the wall with my fingers in it, you know, touching his eyes, you know, they're going to go right through. You know you got the guy, you know, you're dead. And the point that I'm making is that one after another, and it still goes on, and it goes on every week, new guys will come in with black belts in this and black belts in that. They'll get beaten up, and they still won't admit that they just spent 25 years of their life learning a martial art that does not work in the streets. Because they invested their life into it. And they don't want to admit that they invested in something that's not true. It's the same thing in politics. It's the same thing in religion. It's believing in a lie, and you're intellectually capable of knowing that it's a lie. And it goes back to me again, where people are afraid to look within themselves. Because if they look close within themselves, they'll say, I don't want to live this lie anymore, and I'm not going to take it. And that's what's going on. That's the frustration to me. But again, having said that, I also believe in the real probability of a great awakening. That people are now going to start realizing, as what you said to me, you know, the quote that I've been well known for, when people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. Well, before they lose it, there may be a groundswell of intellectually capable people to change it.
You know, I've been around for a while, and I've traveled all over the world and did a lot of traveling lately, and I must say that I have the feeling that people will fall from one extreme to the other. from this passive couch potato, and when they start getting hungry, suddenly they get violent. That means
I know.
they fall from one extreme into the other.
I know. And again, that's why, I say what I say. I'm a guy that grew up in the Bronx, in Yonkers. I know what it looks like.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that if enough of us are aware, and there are a lot of wonderful people out there that really care, if they could break out of their psychodrama and see what the lie that they're believing in and stop supporting it. I have a line that I use. Conservatives, what they call conservatives today, believe, and liberals, what they call liberals today, lie.
Yeah.
A conservative, as they call them in the United States, these are the kind of people who say, we got to kill all them Muslims. Matter of fact, a woman just pushed a guy in front of the railroad subway in New York thinking he was a Muslim.
Even he wasn't.
I know. And she learned to hate Muslims since 9/11.
Right.
So those are the stupid, crazy people. They actually believe their stupidity. Liberals, on the other hand, are intellectually capable of knowing what they're believing in is contrary to their belief system, but they lie. Liberals lie. For example, hey, Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize, but he called for war against Libya. Well, Gaddafi wasn't a good guy.
Exactly.
Hey, but didn't Obama promise, like, as soon as he got elected, that he was going to close Guantanamo, and he didn't? Well, he tried. Hey, wait a minute. There's not one head on Wall Street that rolled from the criminality since the Panic of '08, and he's taken our money and gave it to them. Well, he only could do so much.
Yeah.
Wait, he signed the National Defense Authorization Act that robs us of our constitutional rights. He's sending in predator drones on a weekly basis almost, going into foreign countries and killing people without a trial, without any charges. Well, there are bad people in the world. But the National Defense Authorization Act allows the military to come crashing through my doors. And I'm talking to this guy in Germany or Switzerland, and they say that he's a terrorist and are now accusing me of having ties to terrorism. They take me away. I have no judge, no jury. I have no phone calls. I have no writs of habeas corpus.
Yeah.
Well, that was in place before Obama came.
Sure.
They'll make up one lie after another. It's the liberals, the liberal liars that are holding back advancement because they support the biggest BSer in chief, not only here, but around the world. They believe in their leader. And their leader can lead them over the cliff, fiscal or otherwise.
Right. I've said a couple of times that the things regarding what happened in Iraq and in Libya and now in Syria and also against Iran, there is always this media war going on before with all the lies and making axes of evil and that these are bad guys we have to take out. Do you think, or what I don't understand is why these countries don't spend money in counter media work to kind of balance this wrong picture. Do you understand why Syria and Iran is not investing more money into media PR work? Because that would be cheaper than having a war.
I don't think they're a different breed of the same cat. I mean, these aren't the people that seek power. By nature, there's something wrong with them, and so it's kind of more of the same, but just a different color and a different language. So they're not hip to it because they're part of it. I mean, look, I'm totally opposed to intervention into Syria, but not for nothing. Has the Assad family been running the show long enough? It's the same thing with Gaddafi. Look, I'm not in favor. Matter of fact, if you go to our website, when you log in, I have an audio of me debating Al Jazeera's Washington correspondent. And of course, Al Jazeera is owned by Qatar, and they were the big proponents of the war with Syria, as they are with Libya, as they are now with Syria. And well, this guy goes over the edge when I call him out. It was great, you know. But what I'm saying is, when you and again, I'm totally opposed to these interventions. And it's nobody's business, man. You do what you want. Ain't nobody's business if you do, is the old one of these jazz songs. You know, nobody should tell me what I should do. Nobody should tell another country what to do if they're not bothering you. Having said that, the reason why you don't have the governments doing intelligent counter things is because they're the same kind of people, just different. I always make this clear. The people that seek power, want to be presidents or chancellors or prime ministers, these are the same people you hated in high school and college that wanted to be class president and head of the student council. The glad-handers, the suck-ups, the bow-downs, the overly ambitious, and the insincere. They follow their career path. So you don't expect anything great from big centralized governments.
Yeah, but I'm still wondering how they can, I mean, especially regarding Iran. I mean, they've been telling us for the last 25 years, oh, in 1 year they will have a bomb, and when the year comes past, then, oh, well, next year they will have a bomb. And they're telling us this for 25 years now. And what I don't understand is why Iran is not spending more money on counter information. I mean,
well, they are. They are with Press TV.
Yeah, but that's, you know,
but
peanuts.
again, the reason I'm trying to say, the reason they don't is because who the people in politics are. It's a breed. And dogs don't make cats. And they're just all the same cat, but different color. This isn't what they do. They don't know how to modulate and mediate in different ways. This isn't their skill base.
And because I'm comparing that to what Kuwait did, you know, with the daughter of the ambassador, and she did this baby throwing on the concrete floor thing, and that cost them 25 million in PR work.
Yeah, but exactly, they hired Hill and Knowlton out of Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
It was smart, and they hired an American group to do it.
Right.
And don't forget, the Americans were behind it.
Right.
So it was a whole different game. They won the PR war. It was all part of the PR war to go to war, not the PR war to stop the war. And I have to go soon, but I also want you to know that in our next Trends Journal that is coming up soon, I have come up with Gerald Celenti's 4 Rules of Peace.
Good.
And I am going to be promoting this very heavily, and I also, I believe that after people receive these 4 rules of peace, that not President Obama, who started the wars and keeps killing people, got the Nobel Peace Prize. I should be awarded it. And I'm serious. And when you read them, you could call me up and say, Gerald, you're a bunch of hot air. These things are a lot of garbage. Or if you want peace and you believe in it, say, you know what? I'm going to do what he said, what people should do to change things around. I'm going to do everything I can to promote Gerald Celenti's 4 Rules of Peace so that we could move into a higher civilization and that people don't have to keep suffering at the level they are because of the crazy people destroying us.
So I'm certainly looking forward to that.
Well,
and thank you very much, Gerald. And it was always a pleasure talking to you, and I hope all the best for us for 2013.
Thank you, and the next time I'm in your part of the world, I'd love to meet you.
Please let me know. I would love to take care of you, show you around, and we'd have a beer together.
Okay, great. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Felice Anno Nuovo.
Right. Merci. Thank you.